So I have enjoyed the ride on the river. I know what that feels like. And I also know what it feels like to keep getting kicked out of the vortex. And my question is, I know there's an easy answer, and that is to get in the vortex. But I keep experiencing my life circumstances pulling me out. So my question is, how do you have life circumstances that are permanent and not get pulled out of the vortex?
Well, over time, we have described your relationship with who you really are and what you really want in different ways. The vortex was one way. For a long time, we were saying, get into the vortex until you were really annoyed. If I could get in, I'd be in, Abraham, so give it a rest. Or how do I get in? And then we began explaining to you that having awareness of it and understanding the difference between vibrational signals and frequencies might make it easy for you to understand that you're standing next to your vortex and often not receiving the information that's coming from it. In other words, we wanted to turn the conversation about deliberate creating a bit by saying to you, you've already done so much of the creating, and now you're just waiting to receive impulses and thoughts to make it possible and easier for you to enjoy the evolution of your own desires. And we also understood that you've been creating and receiving without even knowing that you are. And so we want to say to you here and now, and you'll hear it really easily in light of everything else that you've heard here today, that you are always in a sort of receiving mode. If you're awake and conscious, you are in a receiving mode of something. You're turned on just like your radio, and maybe you're between stations, and maybe you're focused upon something that isn't pleasing to you, and maybe you're focused upon something that is, but you're always in the receiving mode. Now, when we talk about the receiving mode, what we are implying, what we are wanting you to realize is we want you to be in the receiving mode of who you really are. But to be fair, you're always in the receiving mode. So you're receiving thoughts. Esther has been noticing every now and again she'll get an impulse about something, and she's been stopping and saying, where was I when I received that? What was my vibrational attitude when I received that? Because she wants to know if the thought came from a worried stream of thought that she's been thinking about, or if it came as true inspiration from source energy. Some of the young people in her life, every now and again, she has some friends who just put some pictures up over their bed, and they have glass on them, and they're in Southern California. And so at dinner the other night, Esther suggested that they get those reframed and put some plexiglass on them instead of the glass, because they live in earthquake country now, and Esther has seen her chandelier do a fair amount of swinging, as she's been there for 10 years, and she knows that every now and again there's a hiccup or a burp in the substructure and things fall off of things. And a very young and brilliant, youthful person said, or you could just not create that. And Esther thought, or I could kill you. Well, he was making a really good point. So then the question at the dinner table became, am I creating this reality, or is my guidance guiding me? Am I being guided to better life, or am I creating not good life when my guidance system is sort of warning me about something? And so because of things like that, Esther's been stopping frequently in situations like that and asking, where did that impulse come from? Well, in this case, they'd been laughing, they'd been having a wonderful time, they had basked themselves all the way there. There was nothing that was happening in the conversation that was other than high-flying and tuned in, tapped in, turned on. And the thought just came out of the ethers into Esther's mind, and so she feels certain that it is a really good idea in order to assist them in continuing to live happily ever after. That's all she had to do, is have that thought. So these are good questions for you. When a thought comes up that is unsettling, because when you think about it, Esther was so solution-oriented, she wasn't feeling any negative emotion about that. She knows of a beautiful frame shop where they can get magnificent frames. She saw some plexiglass that is so clear and scratch-resistant. In other words, it just seemed like the perfect idea. It was a perfect idea and a really good thing for her friends to experience. But then she doesn't want to create in their reality, and bumped up against something when she attempted to do that. So now, let's get back to the specifics of your subject. So say it again. So when there is something in my life that seems unchangeable, it's a circumstance that is present.
I have a 21-year-old son who's autistic.
Yes.
So when I project ahead and I know that someday I'm going to transition, I'm concerned about who and how he's going to be taken care of.
Yes. And that's an awful thought. That's an awful thought, because you are doing such a good job of tending, and when you're not there, what will happen? But this is what we were talking about being ready to be ready to be ready to be ready, because since no one is present yet, that person hasn't turned from a vibration to a thought to a thing. And so when you look too far, too fast, and feel the dissatisfaction of it, you just can't get there from there. So if we can call your attention, and this is such a wonderful subject, we're appreciating it so much. So when we call your attention to what we wish so much for you, that you feel satisfaction, 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 satisfaction as you move through life. And there is this subject of worry, worry, worry. How can you turn a subject of worry into a subject of satisfaction? And you do it by starting with the basics, such as, there is nothing that I cannot be or do or have. And even though I do not know the exact route to it or the exact path to it, I believe conceptually that there is an answer. This is the reason that we began teaching you about the vortex, because there were so many people looking at now reality and offering 100% of their vibration based upon now reality, that we knew their now reality could not find improvement. So we wanted them to understand that there's another now reality that is a vibrational reality that is in the state of becoming. In other words, this question isn't so much different than, Abraham, I put the kernel of corn in the ground, but we cannot eat a lot of corn yet. How can I be happy? And you say, well, because you know better about that. Those thoughts have already turned to things. You know about farming, and you know about germination of the seed, and you understand all of that. And so all of those pieces have been filled in for you by you and others. And so you got ready to be ready to be ready to be ready, and now you're eating a lot of corn if you want to. But it's different on some subjects that are still in the process of becoming. So the question is, the problem to which you want a solution is, I'm here and no one else is. And the solution that you seek is, I want a steady stream of helpful people to be in this cycle. But I don't see them, therefore they must not be there. And we say, or they might be like the corn in the ground, not ready to be seen yet. If somebody showed up today, are you ready for that?
I don't know.
Let's just stay there. In other words, are you receiving satisfaction for tending to this 21-year-old angel of brilliance?
Yes.
And if someone said to you, all right, step aside, I'm here to do this, would you gladly go? Or would you want to hang around? Would you want to watch? Would you want to teach? Are you ready for that?
I think for the first time I'm ready to look at that and talk to that person, see how they interact. I think until very recently I was not ready for that.
Well, we know that for sure. Because, and it's not because you don't want it, it's because you don't believe it. This is why we were talking about arguing for limitations. When you have a desire that you don't believe, that's arguing for a limitation. So let's look at it this way. Have you ever had a conversation, we're asking all of you this, have you ever had a conversation with someone, maybe it's about politics, it could be about anything, but that seems to be a hot topic these days, where you have a very clear picture of something, opinion, and they have a very clear opinion, and your opinions are not the same. And so the more you explain why you think the way you do, then the more they explain why they think the way they do, which causes you to explain more clearly the reason you think the way you do, which causes them to explain. And so you've got this sort of stalemate going on. There's this struggle going on, and they don't come with you and you don't go with them. Nobody is persuasive under those conditions. Have you noticed? What we would like you to understand is that you have that same internal struggle, all of you do, going on within yourself between your desires and your beliefs. That when you find a new desire and you've got a pattern of life that's been showing you the absence of it, in fact, that's why you want it, the more you say, I want it, the more your beliefs say, oh, no, you don't. Oh, you think you can get that? You can't get that. In other words, your desires actually challenge your beliefs, and your beliefs actually challenge your desires. There's this tug of war going on inside of you. And the more you try to reason it out, the more logic and other things like it that are resistant in nature will come forward. So that's why we're asking you to not focus upon that subject, but focus upon other subjects where you're not arguing with yourself so much. Other subjects where maybe it's a new subject where you don't have such strong beliefs. Do you know that you can find a new idea that is appealing to you, and your inner being will show you several every day? A new idea that is appealing to you that you haven't thought that much about, and in the same day your inner being can satisfy it several times. Have you ever noticed that? Esther had the most interesting experience. In September, she trimmed some trees at her place in Del Mar so that some of the houses behind could have a better view of the coast. And they all thought that was so nice. And Esther thought that it was normal because she likes looking there. She thought they might too. And her trees were really fast growing. And without even meaning to, she blocked their view. So she called her gardener in and they lowered the trees so that they had more view. Well, on Thursday, she asked the same tree trimmers to come again and do it again on some different trees. And while they were doing it, she went out to a pile of mail in her garage. She doesn't receive mail in her California home, just what she calls junk mail. And so the gardeners and the housekeepers just put it on a shelf in the garage. She hadn't looked through it since September. So now Esther's standing there and she's going through the pile and she's thinking, I should just throw it all away, but there might be something good in there. So she's throwing it all away, throwing it away. It's magazines and flyers and proposals about this and that and this and that. Into the dumpster, into the dumpster, into the dumpster. And she comes out with this little handwritten note with a heart on it and her name in the middle. And she thought, oh, a love letter. So she opened it and it was her neighbors written several months ago thanking her for opening up the view and explaining to her how she was the best neighbor that they'd ever had because she was considerate of them. And she thought, isn't it interesting? Didn't know that note was there in a big pile, and law of attraction gave her the impulse to sort through the pile and find the note on the same day that she was trimming trees again. Now, it seems coincidental. It is a coincidence. But what we're getting at is your inner being knows everything about everything and how to lead you to it. And that's just child's play. This is the same source energy that keeps your earth spinning in its orbit. We think this same source energy can find the perfect person to pick up where you leave off on anything that matters to you. But you can't get there from there if it's something that you're focused upon and feeling dissatisfaction about. So the answer to the question is just find something, anything that you feel satisfied about, and let that preoccupy you for a while. And with all of this knowledge that you've gathered, and as you're more getting ready for that reception and ready for that reception, things just begin to unfold.